Hey, what's up, Liron here. Today I want to share with you two ways of creating interesting textures with watercolor. And this is something I barely have shown to this point. I'm not big usually on making use of textures, but for this one I love the idea and I think it works well for the subject matter. So let's real quick talk about the two ways. One of them is to use granulating colors. So in this example, I'm going to be using a lot of Lunar Black by Daniel Smith. It's a granulating color. You use it, you get to see these beautiful patterns of dots, basically. The second one is to layer or paint one next to another opaque paint that's very light next to a dark paint. So we're essentially going to use that lunar black together with something like a lemon yellow. And you'll see it's a wonderful, very interesting process. So as I was explaining what we're going to do, we also began sketching here. We have this lovely rural church. I'm just putting in the basics. The reason I decided to explore textures here is look at all the lower half of the painting of the scene. It's just the ground and some in a trail, a road, rocks, foliage. This is a wonderful opportunity to see what we can make out of this big shape and make it interesting using different textures. But before we get to that, I'm painting a very thin wash just to indicate the sky. You'll notice it goes from slightly darker to very light on the right. I'm covering the entire paper with a bit of emphasis on the left side with a bit more blue. The colors I'm using are very simple. As always, I'm using mostly phthalo blue, French ultramarine, so two kinds of blue. Then I have pyrrole scarlet and quinacridone rose, which is two kinds of red. And lastly, mostly lemon yellow for this one. Maybe a bit of nugambosia and a bit of the orange you're seeing on the right side. That's kind of a cadmium orange light. And I am going to be using a bit of carbazole violet because it's a good way of darkening things quickly. But for most of the darkness, and I'm using this indanthrene blue by Rosa Gallery as well. But everything here is gray. There's no really strongly saturated color. Now, here's my plan. I'm going to paint the structure. And from that structure, and by the way, everything is dry. Okay, you saw it faded. It's dry now. From that structure, I'm going to go over to the ground. And I'm going to paint the entire ground in one long, continuous kind of recurring wash over detail. It's just I'm not going to let it dry at all, and you'll see what crazy beautiful effects it's going to create, especially in the final scan. You've never seen me do anything like this. This is going to be similar to what Nicolas Lopez produces in terms of granulations, and I think you'll like it. So for this structure, very simple. I'm just filling in the shape. Notice how I'm not painting the outline and then filling in the center. I'm just working top to bottom. I find that leads to smoother washes. Now, while I'm going to mix the wash for the ground, I did take care to leave it with a bit of a wet wash. You see, I'm just adding a bit of clean water to keep this edge kind of alive. I don't want it to dry because I want to link the church with the ground. So I'm going to use this indanthrene blue just to do a couple of touches of wet and wet to darken some spots that I see are a little darker. But we're going to go back actually once we're done with the main washes and just add a couple of touches of details there. But you could get a lot of it done right now. You don't have to wait until it's dry. If you have good enough understanding of watercolor and how to control them, you can start setting yourself up for success later. The key principle is the paint on paper is starting to dry, but it's still quite wet, and the paint in my brush is very thick so that it doesn't spread out too much. So what I'm putting down, almost like a drawing, I'm kind of sketching and drawing the details, but it's going to stay where it is, relatively. It's not going to spread out too crazy. So I'm starting to wash. You'll notice there's a line there that I kind of left. I haven't painted up to that line. We're going to fix that later with a very creative solution, let's say. So I'm starting to pour in mostly Lunar Black and indanthrene blue. Indanthrene blue is kind of like a Prussian blue almost. It looks a little similar. And what you'll notice is I need to go dark here. The ground is very dark. It's darker than the church. And there's a lot of water on paper that we need to counteract. But you'll notice how This wash to me is, I have time to work on it. I'm going to continuously add to it and even remove and come back with water. You're going to see this is where the most interesting, sorry about the ambulance, the most interesting bit of the painting is created, in my opinion. I'm placing in some water there just to blend this little, I'm making this up. It's not really there, just a bit of foliage, just to show that the border isn't just a flat line, just to give it some interest. You don't have to. And remember, a lot of the creative decisions I'm making, I'm going to make a video on this in the near future too, by the way. It's just on a whim. There isn't really, accuracy isn't necessarily my first priority. It's more about expressing myself. Now, top right corner, you're seeing, I zoomed in on the ground just to show you there's a bunch of stuff going on there. Now, you could try and paint it accurate to the source, but what we're trying to do now is play around with textures and seeing what interesting things we can produce. So already you're seeing a bit of the granulation. It takes time to settle and dry. That's when you really see it, but you're going to see more of it as we add more lunar black. But that's already one way we're using it. But soon you'll see me starting to add a bit of the opaque paints, slightly opaque, still watercolor, to really get this to look good. Mostly it's going to be my lemon yellow down at the bottom and the orange on the right, maybe a bit of pyrrole scarlet, we'll see. Now look at what I'm doing. I'm coming back with some water. So what this is going to do is create cauliflowers, right? So I'm tilting my paper because I want to see what kind of weird effects the water is going to bring and kind of how the sediments of the paint are going to drown, basically. And I'm placing some water and I'm tilting it so that the water moves horizontally. I'm just playing around with it. You can fix pretty much any mistake as long as it's still wet. And the wash is very wet, so we can do a lot here and just do and redo and add and remove. And we're good. And the result is going to be, worst case, more interesting. So I put in some water for some flow. Now I'm adding more of that lunar black. And again, once it starts to dry, the texture will be more visible. Right now, it's going to be a little visible. One interesting detail there that I do want to preserve is that road leading up to the church or the top of the hill / mountain. I really like the way it looks, and I hope that as I add more details to this hill or mountain, again, I will darken around that road. And you see, I have time. So we're, like 7 minutes into the process. I can take my time. I can really add and remove. The key is to go wet enough in the beginning. That's really the key. If you start really, really wet, you'll have time. You'll have some other things to deal with. For example, adding dark paint usually, again, will result in not dark enough paint. So you have to come back and again with more paint because there's so much water on paper. But there are a lot of advantages, especially if you want to slowly push the colors to be more what you're into and what you're trying to mix. So here's a bunch of yellow. This is, again, kind of a lemony yellow, and I'm starting to just add it there up to the top because the top is the lightest part. I added some pyrrole scarlet too to create this kind of an orange. There is still a bit of other colors in it, kind of a mix. It's not pure yellow and red. And I'm tilting. Tilting here is a big part of it. I'm coming back with some water, a lot of water actually, and I'm tilting again because I want to see if I can push that paint to move. This is something I'm still experimenting with. It's a result I'm still playing around with and trying to figure out what would happen if I do this. Then I look at the end result and I'm like, okay, I like this about it. I like that about it. This I want to improve about it. And I think that's how you discover ultimately. I am not even close to knowing everything there is to know about watercolor in painting. So, and here's, I'm going to take a sprayer and spray some water on it soon. You can see it there, the mist, to keep the downward flow, to have these vertical lines showing. I am not even close to cracking the code fully when it comes to watercolor. So a lot of what I do is experimentation. But what you'll see happening here that's very interesting is adding the blue and the lunar black and then the yellow and the red. It leads to an interesting depth of color, which I think would be interesting to explore more in future paintings as well. You'll see it has this, and especially in the final scan, you'll see it really well. It has this interesting quality to it. there's depth of colors. It's hard to explain, but you'll have to see it. So now I'm bringing back more water. Why? I'm not sure. I'm just playing around with it. I want to see if I can get different areas where the water spreads out the paint and seeing what happens. And worst case, I can restart, as I've shown you, just add more dark paint, right? But a lot of it is like looking at it and figuring out, okay, do I like it? Do I want to change some stuff? Is there too much water pooling at the bottom that I want to lift? So I'm just coming back with the brush and kind of lifting it. And actually, I can't wait to, now that I look at this process, I can't wait to try another one with this kind of approach. One of my favorite all-time paintings on the cover of my book, Painting a Masterpiece, has that same effect with opaque paint, and it's so fun. So now it's time to get serious. I'm coming back with some very, very dark paint, and you'll notice I'm leaving an area blank for the road. Okay, so I'm painting essentially around it, just leaving a strip of a lighter value right there to show that there's a road climbing to the top. And from this point forward, we can continue darkening and also adding more opaque paint. But a lot of it is angling the paper. Again, kind of moving it in different angles and seeing when it looks, when the motion helps. Look at the palette too, by the way. You can see that lunar black effect. And you see how there's a lot of almost like a powdery feeling to it. That's that. Now, this is the best part of this process, I think. This is where we really add the strong opaque paint. And this is what's going to be responsible to a lot of the finished colorfulness that you're going to see. And what's responsible for it is both the yellow and the red, because the red is also quite opaque. I'm spraying some water on it too. The red is, Pyrrole Scarlet is also kind of semi-transparent. It's a little more opaque. Notice the effect again, paint starting to climb down. Sorry, I lost my track of my words there. And you can start seeing the effects there. Hopefully I'll hold it up closer in a second, but you can start seeing the powdery feeling together with the fact that it's slightly opaque paint. And you can use this to your advantage in so many situations where you can paint very vibrant yellow foliage on top of dark paint. And I've done that before. And if you're in the, by the way, the frustration-free watercolor course, in the newest process I added, check it out, the granulations are beautiful. In the latest process I added, you can see me doing that. This is exactly why I was so excited about this process. If you know, you know, you've seen it. I've never demonstrated this thing before that demo. And now we're doing something similar. Not identical, but similar. So yeah. And if you are a member of the frustration-free watercolor course, I'm sure there are so many who haven't checked it out. A new lesson. Just log in, you'll see it. The last lesson of the course, I think, for free. I just added another lesson because I increased prices. I wanted to give it some more robust value. So now, tilting, playing around with it, moving the paper in different angles, and just essentially letting it dry. Now, I told you I'll have a creative solution for this edge, turning it into a fence, because why not? So here we go, we have a fence there. I didn't want that pencil line to stay there, and once you paint with water over it, it's really hard to erase. So I'll just turn it into a detail. I'll add a couple of people, maybe in the entrance of the road that leads to the church. And then we'll also add a couple of small details to the church itself, whatever structure. I think it's a church. Has a cross up top. Just a few touches. You don't need too much. You don't want to state too much. Just leaving a lot to the imagination of the viewer, essentially. And once we're look at the pattern down below. This is exactly what I wanted to have happen here, and I'm very happy it actually worked out. And what's responsible for this again is both the sediments of the lunar black and how it's granulating, and you can use a granulating medium for this too. That and the opaque colors that I used to paint above. So we're going to sign this, and this is pretty much it for this result. I really hope you enjoyed this one. Again, if you want to master watercolor freedom, you can join the thousands of students in the watercolor frustration-free watercolor course. Just solve that problem for good. Check it out. First link in the description box below. I do want to thank everyone who supports me on Patreon. Really, really appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching, for commenting. Let me know your thoughts and if you want to see more of these kinds of experiments, because I'd be very excited to do more. I'll talk to you again in another vid. Take care.